Have you ever felt like you're just stuck on a treadmill? Working your tail off just to keep your head above water while you see other people succeeding, and it looks almost effortless. Well, today we're going to dive into this incredible story of personal transformation that introduces a really powerful idea, the concept of rewriting your own neural scenario to completely flip your reality. Let's see how one person's journey from total frustration to unbelievable fulfillment might just hold the blueprint for all of us.
And it all kicks off with this brutally honest admission. The author is at a point in his life where he's looking around and he just feels this deep, sinking frustration. I mean, he's an educated guy, a professional, a family man, but when he measures his life by today's standards, he feels like he's coming up short. And that's a feeling I think that a lot of us can probably understand.
He had this big realization that he wasn't really living his life. He was just operating from a script, an internal scenario that was written for one thing and one thing only: survival. So let's take a look at what that old script actually said.
This was the loop playing in his head, day in and day out. And here's the absolute core of this whole story. His actual life seemed to perfectly, almost magically, mirror these really limited expectations. It was like the universe was only giving him just enough to get by because, well, that's all his internal script was ever asking for. And this, right here, just perfectly captures where his anguish was coming from. He would grind away for an entire month to earn his salary, and then he'd see a social media Viner make the exact same amount with one tiny 3-second ad. The unfairness of it all, that feeling of being left in the dust by this new world, it was just crushing. It wasn't really about the money itself. It was about what that huge gap represented. So all this frustration, it lit a fire under him. He had to find some answers. So he started digging into all the popular self-help stuff, the psychological theories that promise you the keys to success, but he just found them all a bit hollow. His first stop was a world of affirmations. You know the idea. Just repeat phrases over and over again to manifest what you want. But his rational mind, and maybe yours too, just kind of kicked in. Like, really? Is it that simple? Can you just stand in front of a mirror and say, "I own a Bugatti," and expect one to just show up? So he lands on this really critical point. If affirmations were the secret sauce, then why isn't everyone who chants "I'm successful" or "I'm rich" actually living that life? There was just this massive gap between what was being promised and what was actually happening. Something was clearly missing. He also looked into Freudian psychology, the whole idea of the subconscious mind secretly pulling all the strings. And yeah, it's a powerful idea that marketers and speakers love to talk about, but from a practical, scientific view, he found it pretty unsatisfying. I mean, for him, if you can't even find it or define it, it just felt like another dead end in his search for real, actionable answers. So after hitting all these walls with secular theories, he turned to the one place he hadn't really looked for these kinds of answers, his own spiritual faith. And this became the absolute game changer for him. And then he found this verse, and boom, this was the light bulb moment. The answer wasn't about trying to get some external force to change his life. It was about starting the change internally first. The power wasn't in some magic phrase. It was inside him all along. That simple idea was totally revolutionary. But wait, this brings up a huge question about the concept of taqdir, or destiny. If your life is already written, then what's the point of even trying to change anything? Was he just supposed to accept his life of struggle as his fate? Or was there maybe another way to look at it? The answer came to him in this teaching. Dua, which means sincere prayer and supplication, actually has the power to change the decree. This was the missing ingredient. It wasn't about just passively accepting your fate. It was about actively engaging with it through your belief and your effort. So destiny wasn't some rigid cage. It was more like a path that you could actually influence. Now, this story right here, wow, it just powerfully drives the whole point home. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, visits a man who is sick and offers him a really positive framing, that his illness is actually a form of purification. But the sick man just rejects that. He says, "No, this is a fever that's going to kill me." And the Prophet's response is just stunning. He says, "Then yes, it will be so." The man basically wrote his own tragic ending, and his reality followed that script. So this incredible realization led him to create his own core concept, a practical tool he developed to actually apply this spiritual discovery in his life. He called it the neural scenario. So what is it exactly? Well, The neuro scenario is the story that you consciously, intentionally write for yourself. And this is not just wishful thinking, it's not some hollow affirmation. It's an internal story that is supercharged with your deepest, most sincere belief and earnest prayer. It's the new reality that you choose to believe in and then live into.
And so he did it. He made a conscious decision. He literally sat down and started writing a brand new script for his life. He took that old one about just getting by, and he threw it out. And he started writing a new story, one of abundance, of success, of making an impact. A reality that at that moment only existed in his faith and in his imagination.
So what happened when he did this? Did it work? Well, the results were, and I'm not exaggerating, absolutely astonishing. His entire reality began to transform in ways he never, ever thought possible. Remember that quote from the very beginning, that feeling of having nothing to show for his life? That was the man living his old broken scenario. What you're about to see is the life of the man who rewrote it. He went from living in a simple fourth-floor apartment to a home he describes as a mansion. He went from just hoping he could afford a modest car to owning the very best model out there. His dream was to open one small clinic, and he was given an entire network of them. He just hoped to teach a few students, and he ended up founding a private medical university. The scale of this transformation is it's incredible. Okay, so how? How did this happen? It seems almost magical, but the author breaks his whole philosophy down into his super clear 4-part formula that anyone can follow. This is the big takeaway. The path, he says, is a clear process. It all begins with ikhlas, which means absolute, pure sincerity. Your intention can't be shallow. It has to come from the very core of who you are. The second step is iman, and that is an unwavering, rock-solid faith that what you're asking for is genuinely possible, not just hoping for it, knowing it. Next comes iltija, and this isn't a one-time wish. It's consistent, earnest prayer and effort aimed at your goal. And when you combine these three things, sincerity, faith, and consistent action, the result is ijobat, realization. The moment your new scenario becomes your new actual reality. And he leaves us with this powerful idea. Your dreams, your deepest desires, the big things you can vividly imagine for yourself, they aren't just random fantasies. He says they're a form of divine promise. The very fact that you can imagine it is the first sign that it's meant for you. And that leaves us with a final, really thought-provoking question for ourselves. If our imagination is actually a preview of what's possible for us, and our internal script is what shapes our reality, then the most important thing we can ask is this: what scenario are we writing for ourselves right now?